Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jadwiga and I am going to tell you the amazing story of the spiritual development and growth of a young girl called Cinderella. A rich man's wife felt that she was going to die, and she called her single daughter to her deathbed and said, Listen, my little girl, I will leave you, but if you always stay faithful and good, I promise that God will always protect you and I will be there for you whenever you need me. And with these words, she passed away. The little girl was very, very sad, and 3 times a day she went to her mother's grave where she wept and prayed and missed her very, very much. So after a couple of months, her father remarried again, and he married a woman with 2 daughters of her own. And now that was a very, very bad time for the little girl because her stepmother and the stepsisters, they treated her very, very badly. Not only was she no longer allowed to wear her beautiful dresses, she had to do the ugliest and dirtiest work in the household. She was no longer allowed to sleep in her bed, but she had to stay beside the cinders of the hearth. And so she was always dusty and dirty and, well, did not look nice anymore. One day, the father said, I have to go on a journey. And he asked the 3 girls, what should I bring for you? And the first stepdaughter said, oh, I want beautiful clothes and dresses. And the second said, I want jewelry and precious stones. And then he asked, and you, Cinderella, what do you want? Because they always called her Cinderella because she was so dusty and dirty. So, you, Cinderella, what do you want? And she said, oh, Father, when you are riding back home, I want you to cut me the first branch that hits your hat. The father left for his trip, and he got the wonderful dresses and the precious stones and jewelry for his stepdaughters. And on his way back, when he was riding back home, a branch hit his hat. And so he stopped and cut that branch, and it was a hazel branch. He brought all those things back home to his stepdaughters and his daughter. And Cinderella took this hazel branch and planted it onto her mother's grave, where it started growing very quickly because she had watered it with her tears. And this hazel branch became a beautiful tree. And whenever Cinderella went there, and she still did that 3 times a day, weeping and praying, there were 2 white little doves sitting in these branches, and they were singing and whispering. And whenever Cinderella had a wish, they would drop that thing down to her. Now it happened that the king of the country was going to arrange a huge feast because his son, the prince, was looking for a bride. And of course, all the young girls in the country and from abroad, they dressed up and were very happy to go to that feast because each of them hoped to become the next queen. And so did the stepmother and her 2 daughters, and they let Cinderella clean their shoes and make their dresses nicely and comb their hair and make braids and whatever they wanted. And Cinderella said, oh, I would like to go to the feast too. Please, please take me with you. Please let me go there. And the stepmother and the stepsisters, they laughed at her and said, you, look at you. You don't have dresses. You are dirty. You're dusty. You're ugly. You cannot go there. No, no, no. It would be a shame for our family if you appeared there. But Cinderella didn't give up. She said, oh, please, 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 I want to go there. And eventually, the stepmother took a bowl of lentils, poured it out over the ashes, and said, if you succeed to pull out these lentils within 2 hours, you may come to the feast. And Cinderella opened the window of the kitchen and she called out, oh, you sweet little doves and all the birds in the sky, come help me sort the good ones into the pot and the bad ones into the crop. And in came the two white little doves, and followed by a flock of turtle doves and all the other birds in the sky came into the kitchen and they started peck, 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 putting the good lentils into the pot and the bad ones into their crop. And that went on for quite an hour, this peck, 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 peck. And within 1 hour, Cinderella was able to bring that bowl to her stepmother and said, look, I've made it, and now I can come to the feast. But her stepmother did not want to stand to her promise. She said, no, 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 no. And she took 2 bowls of lentils and said, you have to pick them up from the ashes within half an hour. Then, if you succeed doing that, then you may come to the feast. And she thought, this is impossible. She will never be able to do that. But again, Cinderella opened the window of the kitchen and called all the little white doves and all the birds in the sky and asked them to help her put the good ones into the pot and the bad ones into the crop. And again, it started pick, 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 because all the birds came in, pick, 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 and all the birds were working. And within half an hour, the 2 bowls of lentils were sorted from the ashes. And again, Cinderella took these 2 balls to her stepmother and said, and now I can come to the feast. No, said the stepmother, you are too dirty, you have no dress, you cannot dance, you don't know how to behave. No, 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 no way. And the mother, the 2 daughters, and her father left for the feast. Now, as Cinderella was all alone, she went to her mother's grave and she called that tree, oh, that hazelnut tree, oh, dear little tree, let gold and silver fall upon me. And these 2 little white doves, they dropped a beautiful golden and silver dress for her with the fitting shoes, and everything was so nicely made and so special that no one had ever seen such a dress. And now when Cinderella appeared at the feast, nobody recognized her, neither her father, nor the mother, nor the stepdaughters, stepsisters. Nobody realized that this was Cinderella. But the prince, seeing her, immediately went over, took her hand, and he danced with her. And only with her the whole night. And whenever another man came and wanted to dance with Cinderella, he said, no, 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 this is my partner. And when the night was over, Cinderella said she wanted to go home. And the prince wanted to accompany her because he wanted to see where she lives, what family she came from. But she just slipped away, and he tried to follow her, but just saw her disappearing in the dove coop of her father. And there he stood and waited for her father to come home and said, my dancer, this beautiful little girl, she just disappeared in your dove coop. And the father took an axe and hammer and hit the dove coop apart, But of course, there was no Cinderella because she had disappeared on the other side. She had left her beautiful dress to the little doves, run into the kitchen, put on her dirty smock, and lay in the ashes, pretending to be asleep. So the next day, the mother, her two daughters, and the father went for the feast. And Cinderella, after she was alone at home, went to her mother's grave, to that beautiful hazel tree and the two white doves up there. And she said, "Oh, little tree, oh, dear little tree, please let gold and silver fall down upon me." And this time, the two little doves dropped down a dress that was even more beautiful and magnificent than the one they had brought her the day before, with the fitting shoes. And now Cinderella appeared at the feast. The prince had already been waiting for her. He took her hand, and the whole night he would only dance with her. And if ever another man wanted to have a dance with Cinderella, he said, "No, this is my partner." Now, Cinderella had to go home. And again, the prince wanted to accompany her, but she slid away and just disappeared. He just saw her disappearing somewhere in the pear tree of her father. And he waited there for her father to come home. And he said, "Well, I think this little girl, my dancer of the night, somehow has disappeared in that pear tree." And the father took an axe and cut that pear tree down. But of course, there was no Cinderella because she had disappeared on the other side, had left her beautiful dress with the doves, run into the kitchen, put on her dirty cloth, and lay down in the cinder, pretended to sleep. The third night, and that was the last night of that feast, and the prince knew he has to find out who that beautiful girl is, or she would be gone forever. So after he had danced with her the whole night, and this time she had the most magnificent and beautiful and precious dress you had ever seen, and her little shoes were from gold. And well, the prince tried to bring her home, but again she just slipped away. But this time the prince had given order to put, oh, how is that called? That sticky black stuff on the stairs. And when Cinderella run down the stairs, one of her shoes stuck in that black stuff. The prince took it and then walked to the house of the father and the stepmother and to the two stepsisters and said, "This is the shoe my dancer has lost last night. So I will only marry the girl whose feet fit into that shoe." The stepmother took that shoe, took her oldest daughter into the bedroom and said, "Go, put that shoe on." But her feet were too big, so she couldn't even get her big toe into it. And the stepmother gave her a knife and said, "Cut off your toe. Once you're a queen, you don't have to walk anymore." And the stepdaughter took that knife, cut off her toe, slid into that golden shoe, swallowed the pain, and walked out. And the prince took her upon his horse. But when they were riding home, they passed the hazel tree with the two little doves. And the dove said, "Rookity-goo, rookity-goo, there's blood in the shoe. This is not the true bride." And the prince looked down, saw the blood running out of that shoe, turned his horse around and said, this is not the right bride. I want the other one. So again, they took that shoe. The other sister went into her bedroom, tried to put on that shoe. Yes, she could get her toes in, but not her heel. And her mother gave her a knife and said, cut off part of your heel. Once you're queen, you don't have to walk anymore. And the girl cut off part of her heel, pressed her foot into that shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the prince who was waiting there. He took her on to his horse, and when they passed the tree with the doves, they said, rookity-goo, blood's in the shoe. This is not the right bride. And when he looked down, oh, the blood had already tainted her white stockings. So he turned his horse around, let her down, said, this is not my bride. Isn't there any other girl? And the father said, no, no, just Cinderella, but she's too dirty, and no, it can't be her. But the prince insisted that Cinderella should come. Well, the family did not want her to let her go out, but the prince would not give in. He said, I want to see her. I want to have her here. And so Cinderella washed her face and stepped out to the prince, and he recognized her. And of course, this golden shoe perfectly fit on her foot. And now, when they were riding home, passing the hazel tree with the two doves, they said, rookity goo, that's the right bride. She is the true. And so he brought her home. The wedding was arranged. And the two sisters and the stepmother, well, they wanted to at least get something out of that combination, that wedding, maybe some money or dresses or whatever. So they accompanied Cinderella when she walked into the church, one of the sisters on her right and one on her left. And the two doves sitting on Cinderella's shoulders, they picked one eye of each sister out so that they were blind on one eye. And after the wedding, when they went out, again, the two doves were sitting on Cinderella's shoulder. The two sisters, now with their healthy eyes close to Cinderella, accompanied her. And again, the doves picked out their eyes so that the sisters were completely blind. Yes, and the prince and Cinderella, I think they became very happy, and they became a very good king and queen for their country. Whew, what a story. Well, the first thing that I came up to was that father who did not protect his daughter, who would not stand up and say, hey, this is not the way you treat my daughter. She is equal to the other two sisters, and you don't have the right to treat her like that. No, he didn't do that. He even himself called her Cinderella. And he denied her when the prince returned with a second wrong bride and said, isn't there another daughter in your house? He said, no. And then, just Cinderella, but it can't be her. So what kind of a father is that? This is not a man. This is I don't know what, but not a person you could love or be respectful. On the other hand, the father brought that hazel branch. And without that hazel branch that grew up to a hazel tree and hosted the two doves, Cinderella could not have developed that way she did. So there is One little good thing the father did to her, and the rest you better forget. The ashes. The ashes are the rest of something that was burnt. So it's the result of a process of transformation, but not something we wish. It's dirty, it's dusty, we don't want to touch it, but it's definitely a result of a transformation. And while that Cinderella had to stay in this cinder, and she felt dirty and ugly, and maybe she was even ashamed. This shows how she felt after her mother's death. She was lost. There was nobody who would embrace her or kiss her or say a good word. And actually, she has already also lost her father because her father did not stand up to protect her, to defend her. Her father called her Cinderella too. And so she was all alone in the world. Well, once this, she always obeys. She's obedient. She does what um, she has to do. She does her job. She does her work. She never says, no, I don't want to. She does not stand up and protest. She's just a silent little girl, obedient. But then something changes because she asked the stepmother to come to the feast. And she says, yes, when you pull out these lentils out of the ashes, which is a crazy idea to put the lentils into the ashes and let her pull them out, but okay. So to her surprise, Cinderella succeeded. And then she says, no, 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 you have to do two bowls. And even after Cinderella succeeds with that task, she still denies and doesn't let her go to the feast. And this is the turning point because Cinderella no longer pleads and weeps and says, oh, please, please, let me, I want to, and blah, 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 blah. No. After they all have gone, she goes to her mother's grave, to the little birds, and says, hey, give me something, give me a dress, give me something that I can appear on that feast. And that works. The doves bring her that dress. Actually, three times they do that. And this shows that Cinderella has finished the process of being in the dirt, of feeling ugly, of being obedient and letting treat her like dirt. She grows up, she stands up and says, no, I am myself. And I want to go to that feast, and I do that. And of course, the prince falls in love with her. That's not a big surprise. So, what does the shoe mean? Some people say the shoe means fertility. Hmm, I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me, but maybe. And in Greek mythology, the empty shoe symbolizes a loss and a grievance, which obviously is on the prince's part because he has just lost this girl he wanted to stay with. But on the other hand, a shoe is protective. A shoe protects our feet from the stones and the heat and the rough surface of our path. So a shoe can mean several different things. I don't know. It's up to you. Maybe you find an explanation for that. The hazel is a really important symbol in that story. We use hazel branches for dowsing rods and hazel for wands. And hazels are said to be able to connect us with our higher senses, with the outer world. And So it makes sense when there is a hazel tree growing on her mother's grave. And it also represents wisdom. And by cutting one branch and putting it in the ground, she lets something new grow. And when something new grows, that means something old has to die to make place, to make space. And we can see really clearly what grows in that girl. There grows self-confidence, there grows strength and power and will, and there grows the will to stand up for herself and to do what she wants, to follow her path and not the path that her family shows her. No, she takes her own path. Yes, and the feet of the sisters are too big. They don't fit into that tiny shoe. That shows that the sisters, well, they stand on big feet means all the outer world, everything you can buy for money is much more important to them than the inner worth. Yeah, and so it's just the perfect end for that story. And that they are blind, yeah, they did not see what they were doing, and they did not see what Cinderella went through. The only thing I'm not happy with is that the stepmother, who initially started this bad behavior, that bad treatment for Cinderella, she's not mentioned. So as if she had done nothing wrong. I don't think that's just, but we'll see. Thank you for listening up to here. And I am happy to see you again to my next video and say goodbye.